Chapter 2. A Brother's Comfort. Stingmon had always wanted to bring Ken to the kingdom of his birth. The Oasis City, deep within the WWW continent, was a beautiful place, home to many noble and aristocratic Digimon throughout the continent. Long ago, before Ken was born, he governed the kingdom alongside his elder brother. But over the centuries, Stingmon had felt empty and lonely inside. Sure, he had his brother, but his brother had been distracted with caring for the Digimon that thrived under them, especially with the holy beasts becoming less active in protecting them. There would be times in where Felismon would be held up at those meetings, or in his study, or inspecting the progress of their citizens, leaving him alone to train the warriors guarding the continent. The need for a companion, something to live for, someone to cherish, would become so great at times that he would find himself daydreaming and wishing as he gazed over the horizon. And then one day, the entity, Homeostasis, appeared to him when he was walking the grounds of the healing oasis. Homeostasis had told him of a human child being born in the coming decades. The child was destined to be a chosen and the key to both worlds' survival. But they needed a Digimon to be partnered with the child, one that would protect and cherish him. Stingmon had at first been shunned. Homeostasis expressed its concerns about the holy beasts being arrogant in their proceedings, believing that they were better than the Digimon under them. It greatly angered Stingmon when he learned the holy beasts' plans of using human children to fight their battles, instead of dealing with Vamdemon and his overgrowing power and views that rivaled the holy beasts. Despite that knowledge, Stingmon accepted the position. It was not because he wanted to help the holy beasts. Shakamon, no. He had his reasoning for accepting the position of a chosen Digimon. Stingmon wanted the bond and closeness that came with being a chosen Digimon. The rumors surrounding human-Digimon partnership were very well known among the Digimon. These partnerships were said to be a lifelong spiritual and emotional bond. Their souls would be deeply intertwined, allowing a Digimon to sense their human's emotions and to gain the power to evolve to unimaginable heights. Of course, a human's life was short, but when the human finally passed away, the human soul would find its way back to the digital world and be reborn as an immortal digital entity, forever being with their Digimon partners. And when Ken was finally born, Stingmon had felt the urge to protect him. His brother had understood his decision to leave, making him promise to visit, to tell him the tales of his adventures. When Stingmon finally met Ken for the first time, he adored the little boy, for the child seemed to fill the void that he had been feeling for centuries. Ken meant the world to him. So imagine his shock and worry when the child got hit by the dark seed and grew terribly ill. It was on that night, when everyone was asleep, when Homeostasis appeared to him once again, telling him of the holy beast's plans. He had felt cold rage upon learning that the holy beasts knew of the dark seed's evil purpose. But the holy beasts feigned ignorance, opting to use the child to train the future chosen who were to be picked to fight the coming threat. The return of Vamdemon was seen as a threat to their power, favoring their power over the morals of using an unstable child, burdening him with so much suffering, greatly angered him. The Kaiser would have just been the beginning of Ken's suffering. It greatly amused him how the holy beasts had overlooked the possibility of Vamdemon noticing the corruption dwelling within Ken. They must have been cursing at their stupidity, as Vamdemon had Ken build the dark towers to seal the holy beasts' powers away. But it had been that action that forced the holy beasts to summon the new chosen, and to unknowingly guide them to the Digimentals. Ken was merely a pawn in their greater scheme. Ken being the Kaiser was what made the Chosen come together to fight against his brainwashed friend. Stingmon had hated that he couldn't do anything to help his partner, for the Dark Tower and Ken's unwillingness to use him, mainly due to the Dark Seed, prevented him from evolving. And Ken, too warped by the corruption of the Dark Seed and by the influences of the Holy Beasts and Vamdamon, caused Ken to ignore and loathe him. Stingmon hated the things Ken had to go through. He hated the fact that his sweet, gentle, kind-hearted partner had to suffer due to the Holy Beast's arrogance and unwillingness to settle rivalries and problems themselves. Felismon and the rest of the leaders had not been pleased when they got word of what had happened. But what could they do? It was for the greater good, the Holy Beast had said when Felismon, Holy Angemon, and Bastamon confronted Qinglongmon when he returned to his tower one day. Stingmon, calm down. Greater good his ass. He'll be fine. Sure, the threat to the Holy Beast's power was gone. Ken Kun is a strong kid. So why was his partner still suffering? Stingmon? Why was his partner forced to endure the verbal and physical attacks of his father? Why was he being treated like he was unimportant, unneeded, a waste of space? Why was his child forced to watch his life shatter right in front of his eyes? Why had he not done something to prevent this? Stingmon, are you listening to me? Stingmon truly hated himself. He knew Ken was aware that what his father was doing was wrong. Ken was aware that he deserved to be treated better, that what his father was saying was lies, all lies. Yet Ken would not fight back. He would not even tell the others what was going on. He would not run away to the digital world, despite him begging. He would not fight back. Why would he not fight back? Digital world to Stingmon. That was a stupid question. He knew exactly why. Despite how grown up Ken acted and how fast he was forced to grow up, Ken was still just a child. A terrified child. Ken was a child that had been abandoned by his mother, which had really scarred Ken emotionally. And despite what Ken believed, was a victim of child abuse at the hands of his own father. The very thought of that vile scumbag brought a boiling rage, one that he had not felt in decades, to the surface. How could Ken be expected to defend him from that overly violent, short-tempered, child-beater, brainless drunktard? For Shakamon's sake, Stingmon, get a grip on yourself before you destroy my castle! Stingmon blinked, realizing he was 5 seconds away from skewing the beams that held the floor above them in place with his spike. With a grunt of disgust at himself, at his inability to control his temper, Stingmon retracted his spike and turned to face his brother. Felismon, a fallen angel Digimon, clad in black, skin-like leather, was still seated on the Gothic-style sofa. Of course, this seemed to clash with the general layout and structure of the European-style castle. That would have been similar to the castles built by the King of Bavaria back in the day. The Victorian-style carpets and rugs, the paintings and moldings from the Edo and Shogun periods, and the modern-day technology and appliances. Ken would have been fascinated by all of this. Ken's intellectual side would have surely been stroked and astounded by the different cultures integrated into one castle. The mere thought of his partner further dampened his current mood. Stingmon, I know you're upset, but... Stingmon found himself narrowing his eyes at his elder brother. Felismon was what one would call the personification of the devil itself, and had the attitude of a sane aristocrat, but he was just too calm. Stingmon had not failed to notice that his brother had been just sitting, sipping the tangy berry-like tea known as Tamaryokucha. That was Ken's favorite. Watching him pace around in the study as his anger and worry festered in his mind. How can you be so calm at a time like this? Stingmon could not contain his rage. Stingmon, you need to calm down, said Phallasmon as he calmly sipped his tea. Calm down, Stingmon growled as he gestured to the archway that led to the hallway, adjacent to the room Ken was currently being treated in, which he had not been allowed to stay in. Ken-chan is severely injured and possibly dying for all we know, and all you can do is tell me to calm down. Phallasmon placed his teacup down on the elegant white Victorian tea table, sighing as he did so. Stingmon knew he was being unfair. His brother had dropped everything he had been doing to help him when he sent that distressed call over Ken's D-terminal. His brother had thankfully had Digimon with him, allowing the elder Digimon to keep Ken stable enough until they were able to reach the castle. His brother even went as far as to ask the aid of Lady Bastamon, one of the other rulers of the neighboring kingdoms, deep within the Stack jungle, for one of her healers. His brother had done so much for him. He should be grateful to have such a wonderful brother. And what good would it do to be angry? Stingmon did not respond. It won't solve anything. It won't fix what has been done. Phallasmon stood up and made his way towards him, yellow eyes showing their concern and sympathy. I understand what you are going through, but being angry won't help your brother. He's very vulnerable right now. Phallasmon placed a reassuring hand on his shoulder. He needs you to be strong for him. Stingmon felt something snap within him as anger overflowed his senses. How can you possibly understand how I feel? He asked, slapping Phallasmon's hand away. You weren't there, Phallasmon One-san. You weren't there when I found Ken unconscious after I visited you. You weren't there when his father beats him or belittles him or treats him like he's trash. You weren't there when Ken cried himself to sleep and begs me not to get involved, fearing that the human world would harm me too. This wasn't right. He should not be fighting with his brother. But he just felt so angry. He was angry at Ken's mother for leaving without a trace. He was angry at the man that was the cause of Ken's pain and suffering. He was angry at Vamdamon and the holy beasts for using his child for their own selfish gain. He was angry at Homeostasis for not interfering when he knew what would happen to this child. But most of all, he was angry at himself. You don't know what it's like to see Ken constantly suffering. You don't know what it's like to see him slowly shattering in front of my eyes. Stingmon balled his fists as he threw his frustrations and fears at his brother, unaware that his words were cutting his brother's heart like butter. Ken was my responsibility. He's my partner, my best friend. For the greater good or not, I shouldn't have let the holy beasts, nor Belial Vamdamon, did as they wished with him. The wall cracked under his fist as he slammed his fist on the wall. I failed him. I should have protected him better. Stingmon sighed heavily as the anger all but drained from his body. He slumped against the wall, staring over at his brother's shoulder to gaze at the samurai modeling and paintings that coated the edges of the walls and ceiling. Maybe you're right. Maybe you should have protected him better. Stingmon felt his heart cringe painfully in its chest as he returned his gaze to his brother. Phallasmon was normally a very calm Digimon, and usually never allowed himself to act out on his anger. However, it seemed Stingmon had managed to strike a nerve deep enough to cause his calm facade to finally crumble. Phallasmon stared back at him, his eyes blazing and his voice shaking with shock and disbelief. His brother's face was twisted in pain, making Stingmon realize that he hadn't exactly told his brother what had been going on back in the human world, and just how badly he must have hurt his brother. Oh, this was bad. The holy beasts are arrogant fools, using children for their own selfish agenda. Felismon took a deep breath and slowly let it out. Felismon didn't raise his voice, nor did he yell. He was trying to stay very calm in this tense, fragile situation. Felismon never did like fighting with him anyway. But do you really think I don't know what it's like to have someone I care for to be constantly suffering? Felismon didn't give him time to respond. To have someone I care for go off to another continent, thousands of miles away. To have your soul feel like it's shattering in two when the one you care for dies. Stingmon's eyes widened as his brother spoke in a calm, shaky voice. Felismon was talking about him. Do you truly think I don't know how it feels to be scared half to death, knowing that you are out there fighting the holy beast's battles, not knowing if you will ever return? Stingmon found himself at a loss for words. His brother had never been one to express his fears or personal feelings. He would express his concerns, yes, never personal though, and not with the intensity that he was expressing now, and those concerns would more directly concern the Mons that lived within his kingdom, and the treaty and politics he had with the neighboring kingdoms. Stingmon tried to find a word to respond to his brother, but the guilt that replaced the anger, that had been festering within him for several hours now, held him back. What could he possibly say now, after blowing up at his brother like that? Stingmon. Felismon spoke in a softer tone, his voice breaking slightly as a chuckle escaped his lips that seemed to be mixed with a half-sob, his eye glistening with unshed tears. You mean the world to me. Knowing that you are out there on Server or on Fire Island, risking your life, battling those conceited, patronizing holy beasts' battles, scares me. Stingmon found himself stunned. Felismon was scared? He wasn't supposed to be scared. Believe me, I know what you are going through. I feel that same way every day when you are out there fighting. Oni-san. I'm scared too, you know? Felismon gave him a pained smile, one that showed how much he was hurting. Knowing that someone that I see as a baby brother is being greatly abused. Stingmon's eyes widened on their own accord. Felismon had never met Ken before, only knew from what he told him when he visited. Yet, Felismon saw Ken as a member of their family, a second brother. I know it's hard. Felismon grounded his shoulders, smiling reassuringly at him as he regained his composure. But Ken will not die. Jijimon, Marinanjamon, Cutamon, and Sorceramon will not allow it.